Hey guys, it's Jake from Evolving Daily. Today I'm going to do an install of the XS Systems Big Dots on a Glock 17 without a vise or a hammer. I'm going to do the install, trying to do it with as little tools as possible, just because I know a lot of guys don't have a workshop or anything like that. So literally what you see in the picture is what I'm going to be doing the install with, and this Glock 17 has a peened, staked, I'm not sure the technical term for it, but it's a, I think it's a staked front sight, Trijicon night sight. So it's a little bit different than most of the ones that you'll see online. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we're going to do it with just the slide, the sight that gets shipped to you, and a multi-tool. Alright guys, so it's going to be pretty much impossible to record while I do it, but I'm just going to be holding the slide and pinching the sides of this. You may have to push up on your sight blade to get this to raise up to where you can get a good purchase on it, but I'm just using an SOG multi-tool. I'm just going to be using the needle nose side of it to pinch that sight together and get it to drop out the top. Alright guys, so the part where everybody uses a vise, we're going to try to get around that. Basically all you have to do to get this sight out is push it. You drift it across and it comes out the side. That's how a dovetail sight works. All you're really needing to do is to make the slide not move left or right while you put on your punch and knock it out. So if I turn the sight on its side on this table, I'll be able to get it over to where it's flush with the outside of the slide, and then once I get it to there, if I can't pull it out, I'll just set it on the edge of the table and we'll adjust the camera for that. This is probably going to be horrible camera work because you won't be able to see what I'm doing, and it's probably going to jump around when I hit it. But I'm going to be placing the punch, the provided punch in the pack, and I'm going to try to place it flush with the angle of the slide. So we're not going to try to punch on it like that because it's just going to skip off. We're going to get flush with it, or however you'd want to describe that, and then just drift it out to the far side. So I'm backing it up against this little piece of wood that's on the bottom of the slide, and it's obviously sitting down on the table, and we'll see if we can punch it out. And no hammer, just using the multi-tool. Alright, so now we've got it to where the outside of the slide is flush. Still too tight to pull out, so now we'll move it up on the edge of the table and see if we can push it out the rest of the way. Alright guys, so now what we've done is we've come over to the edge of the table. It's less secure because I don't have a post here to rest it against, but I'm going to set it to where the slide comes out, and the top of the slide here is flush or sticking just beyond the edge of the table here, to give that the rear sight somewhere to go, because obviously if it's hitting the table right there, it won't let it go out any farther. So now I'm just going to kind of try to hold it in place with my hand, the same hand that I'm holding the punch with, and we'll try to drift it out the rest of the way. And there went our sight. So with no vise, just a this is the SOG power lock, just a multi-tool, we're going to be able to do our complete installation. So now we have the front and the rear out on my 17. We'll go ahead and prep the surfaces and then put in our new sights. we're just going to do a quick test fit just to make sure that everything's going to work right. And on some rear sight installs, you have to take away a little bit of material on the bottom of your rear sight. Never, never, never sand or customize your rear sight channel to fit a new sight. Always customize the sight, 100%. But we're just going to do a quick test fit. The front sight has a little nut on the bottom, and XS provides you with the tool. For now, we'll just take it off by hand, and we'll put it in the front. Make sure that everything's going to be okay. We'll just drop our nut in to the tool that's provided. So we've installed the front sight just hand tight with no Loctite or anything like that, just to make sure that it goes in properly and there's nothing wrong with it. All looks pretty good. Alright guys, XS sights, because they have, and I'm sure there's other companies, but because they have these two set screws here, they go in just finger tight. So you should be able to get it all the way to the middle just with a little bit of pressure, and should line up just about like that. With other sights, or even with these, if they go in really, really hard or won't go in at all, some of them they'll go about halfway, and you sand the bottom of the sight, and you always change directions. So if in your case you did have to sand the bottom of it, we'd go back to our multi-tool and we would get out our little file and give it 1-2 passes in one direction, then switch directions. So mine doesn't need it, but if it did, you would go keep the sight flat and level and push it down, 2, maybe 3 times, then flip it 180 degrees and do the same. Don't remove too much to start with, just a little bit at a time, test fit, a little bit at a time, test fit. Just keep doing that over and over until you get something that works about like that. So our test fit looks pretty good. Now we'll take everything apart, clean up, degrease, whatever you want to call it. I am just going to use an alcohol prep pad, which is not included, and I didn't have at the beginning of the video. Some people say you don't even have to clean it. I just like to do that for peace of mind. Alright guys, so you won't see this in the instruction manual, but I like to clean everything with alcohol prep pads before I Loctite it. So we'll just clean up the threads on the screw. We'll clean the bottom and the sides of the rear sight. And whenever you're doing this, I usually wear gloves, but I don't have any right now. I usually wear gloves so that way after you've cleaned it, they don't get recontaminated by you touching them. We'll clean the bottom of the front sight blade, the big dot, the bottom of it, where it interfaces with the top of the slide, and set it on something pretty clean after you've cleaned it, because if not, there's no point in it. And use something that leaves no residue and dries quickly. I just use alcohol prep pads. You could use some kind of, I'm sure there's some kind of super tactical degreaser. We'll wipe out the rear sight channel, get it pretty good and clean, and we wipe the top of the slide where the front sight goes and the underneath. And now we'll set it for 5-10 minutes, make sure everything is completely dry. But while it's drying, guys, if you have problems, and not just for this, but if you're trying to put a socket, this is basically a socket, onto a nut or a screw or a bolt head, and you have the problem of it falling out a lot, of course this one is not going to do it as much, but with with this I wouldn't, but with something else I'd put a little bit of grease, like axle grease. Put it in there, put your screw in it, or your nut or bolt head or whatever, and it will help hold it. Just anything that's tacky that you put down in there. You could probably use thread locker. Anything that's tacky, just put it down in there, and you can, a lot of times, unless it's a big bolt, turn it upside down and it won't fall out. Just a little pro tip to save you some headache down the road. Alright guys, so we've given our slide and our front sight ample time to dry. We'll take off the front of the provided thread locker. Then we will apply a generous amount. This thing isn't resealable, so might as well use it upright. We will apply the thread locker to the bottom of the slide. Of course it goes out of focus. The bottom of the slide, we'll put it in place, obviously with the dot to the rear, like it should be. Alright guys, so like I said earlier, I put a little shot of thread locker into the sight tool to help hold the screw while we place it in. And then we will kind of push down on the front sight and then put in the screw. And guys, if this screw doesn't go right away, don't force it. You don't want to cross thread that and foul it up, because then you're going to be waiting on more parts to come in. Guys, don't get a socket and tighten that down a whole lot. Finger tight with this front sight tool is plenty. I think that's even what XS recommends, is just finger tight. So now we'll just kind of check our alignment. I'll have to take it off camera and really check it, but there you can see it's a little skewed. It's a little off this direction. Basically, as you're looking down, if you can, let me try to get it squared up. If your slide is squared up, you shouldn't be able to see the sides of your front sight. If it's twisted a little bit, you'll be able to see just an inkling of the side of the sight. If you're squared up on your slide, you can see it just perfect. There's no side sticking out. So now we will apply thread locker to the back sight after we get it set into place. With this one, you're just going to slide it in and try to get the equal amount of gap on either side. It's about like with a notch and post sight. Just try to get the equal amount of gap from one side to the other. That looks pretty close. Maybe just, oh, now I probably just went too much. Right there looks pretty good. At least it does off camera. I don't know how well it's showing up, but then, and obviously your stripe to the rear. Then we're going to take our provided Allen wrench and tighten these down. You're supposed to put thread locker around the outsides. I put it down in the holes as well. Too much thread locker is not going to hurt anything. It's really not that big of a deal. But I give it a little bit of time to kind of weep down in those holes, which is what this is designed to do. With that little bit of a gap, it'll kind of, that stuff will trickle down in there a little bit. I don't know that it makes a big difference, but I tap it just in case there's air bubbles to try to get them shaken out. Let that set for a couple minutes, then we'll wipe away all the excess. Give it a couple hours to set up, and it's good to go. We can go shoot it. Alright guys, so this is afterwards. I've cleaned it up a little bit. I'll go back through after it's really set up and get some of that out of there, but if you can tell, I'm not too big on aesthetics. I think a worn out gun is what every gun should be, but the reason why I put Loctite down in the holes for the set screws is this sight is always going to be on there. The sight can't go bad. It could break, but it can't go bad. There's no tritium or anything like that in there. Worst case scenario, I've got to clean out that white notch in the rear. This is going to be all kinds of messed up for focus, but there it is, guys. A XS big dot install on a Glock 17 with a staked front sight without a vise. You could probably go get you a $10 multi-tool and buy your sights and do the whole thing. Alright guys, so if you like the video, like, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. Any questions or comments, put them below. There will be links below to other parts of this XS Big Dot series. But I want to thank you guys for watching, and remember, you need to be prepared to thrive while others survive. Thanks.